The Lunar Guardsman. Written by Krimar. Chapter 5. Ending It Bitter. Part 1. Rainbow had never been squeamish at the sight of blood. She would be in the wrong line of work if she was. When performing a brand new trick for the first time, or second or third, crashdowns were a regularity as she would often cut and bruise herself. Applejack was the same, for similar reasons. Working on a farm with hard physical labor sometimes translated to accidents. Rainbow and Applejack would often be the ones to patch up each other when either of them needed help, but it didn't feel good like going to the hospital, which in the case of them both meant almost always. Rainbow didn't really have anything against hospitals, but come on! She doesn't need every little bruise checked out. Every check-in so far had been a whole day's waste for her. Half of it just reciting every small nick and cut she had received in the past last week. It was the major boredom and endless lecture from doctors and nurses. What the hey is misocaticism whatever supposed to mean anyways? Fluttershy, contrary to what ponies would think, could face any injury without the slightest flinch, excluding her bouts of worrying. Being an animal lover that lives at the edge of the everfree forest meant that she had seen the end results of many animal fights. Broken bones, bites, deep cuts, you name it, she would just hum comfortably over it as she examined it casually. Rainbow always thought that was awesome. Rarity didn't have the same fortitude like the rest of them, but after finishing the drama queen part she was practical about it. Something about the sharp implements of pain, she mumbled. Rainbow always suspected the prim white unicorn had a hidden wild side, but she never would have guessed BDSM. Live and learn, huh? Pinkie Pie found the sight of blood, or any wound, no matter the size, gross and nasty, which since this is Pinkie we're talking about meant she glued her eyes to the sight, mixing oohs and ews over it, making constant remarks in her random way. The great surprise after the revelations of the last couple of days was Twilight, that she had practically raised by the most violent guy Rainbow had ever met, and according to their stories, she had caught bits and pieces of his fight's first hoof. Although, apparently he was responsible enough to order Twilight and Spike away when he had the presence of mind, or, more often, drag his victim out of sight. Spike handled himself fine if it wasn't something serious at least, but Twilight couldn't even make herself look at the blood if she had a choice, and woo boy, Rigdon was really covered in the red stuff under his armor. Rigdon had apparently figured Twilight out a long time ago, and that was why the first thing he did after his armor was taken off, had sat down, was to lift her like a little filly and cradle her to his right side, facing her away from the cleanup that was performed on him. Fluttershy, Rarity, and Pinkie called the way she huddled against him, with his arm pulled like a blanket over her chest, super adorable. Yeah, maybe it kind of was. Rainbow secretly agreed. The sudden switch from violence to fawning over Twilight and Spike kept throwing Rainbow out of the loop. It was sweet, sure, but Rainbow rattled her head to bring up the thoughts like that was forming inside of her. It was like he expected every time to be the last time he saw them. Princess Celestia had called for a break in the tournament. Severe injuries were nowhere near unusual, but they couldn't just continue straight after a pony died. Luna and Rigdon had retreated, though most would say paraded back to Luna's tower. Twilight and Spike ran after them and the rest of them followed. Luna brought Rigdon to her own bedroom and had helped them out remove his armor so that he could tend to his wounds. Most of them tried to convince them that he could go to the castle's infirmary instead, but Rigdon refused on the grounds that he would not be welcome sight at the moment. So, it fell to them to make sure that some pony whose body they knew nothing about would not fall over dead on their watch. Fun stuff. Luckily, all Rainbow had to do was pass the bandages. Luna and Fluttershy both examined Rigdon's pierced side that was obviously the most serious injury he received. Unfortunately, his armor did its work and stopped the pick from digging in too deep and with too much force, though it left his flesh ragged and bleeding profusely. Fluttershy feared there was internal damage, but Luna dismissed her concern, claiming greater familiarity with his body. Rigdon may have been acting cool and reserved, but Rainbow saw how he relaxed after Luna's assessment. "They need better armor," he told Luna that's been examining the hole in his armor side. "It was the best we could do at the time," she answered. "We need to have one that's either properly forged or get our hooves on better quality metal.
The large amount of shaping spells weaken the metal and I cannot increase the thickness without it ending in a brittle mess. I hoped you would face blades anyways, not armor-piercing weaponry.
She dropped the piece she was holding back to the ground.
A longer-handled weapon would be nice too.
Luna snorted in amusement.
You did well enough with a pony-fitted hammer, but indeed, we will need proper equipment. I am more concerned with your performance.
Yeah. I made some mistakes there, didn't I?
That is an understatement, she told him severely. I will let the bungle of your initial hesitance to actually strike back slip aside. Your blood on my bedspread says enough. But the way you actually disarmed yourself on your own, I am trying to find the words, but the only ones I can think of are not to be mixed with company.
Rigdon winced at Luna's criticism.
You got underestimated like we hoped,
she continued judging.
But now every pony knows what you are capable of. More blunders like today's are unacceptable. You got bruised too much. Your kind's armor needs more padding than we thought underneath, it seems.
Applejack had been sent to retrieve a bag of Rigdon's blood that Luna kept stored in another room in her chambers, along with the tubing and needles. Turns out that if you keep fighting and then jump around while carrying an alicorn, it's not a good idea for you if you want to keep blood inside while you have a couple of holes in you. Rigdon had trouble climbing the stairs of the tower even with Luna's help. Rarity, to her dismay, and Rainbow's eternal amusement, had been selected, in honor of her seamstress skills, to stitch him back together. Rainbow watched him like a hawk, enjoying the way she gulped every time she threaded the needle through Rigdon's flesh, and waited to see if she would try to stitch her monogram after she finished. His left arm had been less serious, if only because his armor, stiff padding under it, had been able to hold it tight enough to keep him from bleeding out. The unorthodox hoofblade hadn't managed to cut completely all the way through, but it left a great gashing hole and cut veins. Rigdon had been able to hastily tighten his arm brace at some point, and that was probably the only reason he hadn't fainted from blood loss yet. Luna held it close and wrapped some gauze around it until Rarity could turn her attention to it. Fluttershy and Spike were rubbing salve over his bruises. The Earth Pony's kick had resulted in the entirety of his chest becoming blue, and landing on his back didn't help either. They all worked silently. Rainbow and her friends weren't keen on starting a morbid discussion about what happened in the tournament. The way Rigdon and Luna kept grinning at each other, drunk in their own victory, wasn't a great motivator to do so anyway. None of them were eager to hear their feelings about the outcome. Princess Celestia had a different mindset. The bedroom door was kicked open and an angry princess marched in while Rarity was applying the last stitches on Rigdon's arm. Rainbow had never seen the princess angry before. Celestia's eyes were glaring at Rigdon, eyelids half closed and her lip half stern. Her mane didn't move like it used to, in those gentle waves it was known for, before it seemed to spread and whip around like a flame. Rainbow could see her wings muscles tremble from the effort. She put to hold them in place, rather than spread them open in an instinctual act of intimidation. Rainbow dashed and the rest of the girls moved slightly, opening a path between the angry alicorn and her apathetic target. Celestia! Rigdon with a cheery smile inclined his head at her, incredibly unaware of her mood, both arms too busy to move like they usually did when talking.
You came to celebrate victory with us? We are kind of busy at the moment, patching up my sorry self up. But when we are done, I thought we might go and raid your wine cellar. How long has it been since you got west?
A pony is dead,
she interrupted him.
Rigdon faltered. I noticed? I don't get it. I thought we won.
He scooted along the bed, leaving Twilight behind him and sat on the edge.
Is there a problem?
He said, looking curious. Celestia's eyes widened in disbelief. Rainbow herself could not comprehend the sheer callousness of those words. Celestia walked forward till her face was only a centimeter away from him, Rigdon unflinching before her stern gaze. They stood still, measuring themselves against each other. And then Celestia slapped him with her golden horseshoe, hard enough for the metal to break his skin.
There is a family down there right now, she hissed, crying over the corpse of what used to be a loving father and husband. You tore a family apart today, and all you have to say for yourself is there a problem? Should I bring this window up here so you can repeat that to her? Or maybe his orphan? What in heaven's name were the two of you thinking? You were practically celebrating on top of his body. I have seen many things, but such sheer cruelty was just...
She looked at her audience for a couple of seconds before turning back to the cause of her anger.
We are going to talk about this in detail later.
Every pony lowered their eyes. Fluttershy and Pinky were tearing up side by side, and Reagan spent a few seconds looking at the blood he wiped from his cheek.
I see your problem,
he told her.
Things didn't go well today. Finally had a change of mind and decided it would have been so much better if it was my corpse down there instead, right?
Celestia inhaled sharply, behind Rigdon. Twilight and Spike gasped in horror.
I never said that, you complete idiot. Stop trying to get out of this by twisting the meaning of my words, Rigdon. You killed a pony and put 2 others in critical condition. Leaf Stream will never fly again with the damage you caused to her wings. You are lucky Steadfast Ray claimed responsibility for today's events.
Rainbow shuddered. She had hoped it wasn't so bad. Losing her flight, what was left for Pegasus without the sky?
You know, it just came to my attention that you are being rude.
Rigdon changed the topic with sudden hostility.
What are you trying to do now?
I might be wrong because I am an uncultured, stupid, savage monster, but isn't it considered good manners to ask after someone's health when he has been hurt?
He asked sarcastically. Celestia huffed.
You are fine. We both know it takes a lot more than that to kill you.
Reagan agreed with her.
Yes, I have taken worse. You would certainly know how much, but how much more can I take really?
He pointed at the stitched hole at his side.
Somehow, I doubt those ponies knew about what kind of damage I can survive, or where my vital organs are located. Take a good look, Celestia. What do you think would have happened if that blade landed higher? Would it have pierced just my lung? Or was it long enough to hit my heart? What about a bit deeper or sideways? Is dying by perforated intestines and stomach as painful as it is for ponies, as it is for my kind? Keep in mind, of course, that I can't really rely on your magic painkillers.
If you are implying after everything that I don't care...
What I am saying that I didn't pull my punches, but neither did they.
Celestia kicked the ground, her anger returned.
You knew from the beginning they would try to really hurt you, Rigdon. They dedicate themselves to my protection, and they've seen you try to kill me twice.
Hold on. Did she just say...
I've warned you to stay away from them again and again. How much longer can I protect you from your own actions? How many more of my ponies do I allow to be hurt because you are my friend? Where do I draw the line? You could have stopped this any time. I foolishly trusted you would do the right thing for once, and you did not.
I did stop it, he shouted. It was 3 against 1, and they still wanted to play hard. Well, I gave them what they damn wanted. It was the only way it could have ended.
Celestia shoved her face to his, the beginning of tears in her eyes, her forehead almost touching his.
You just can't understand, can you? It could have ended otherwise. I let it go on, and I am to blame for it as well. Because even I kept hope that you would not sacrifice my faith in you once again over a meaningless fight. I know what you have been through, Rigdon. I know you could hardly be blamed for what you had to turn yourself into. I have shown patience for years, forgiven crimes done in ignorance, and allowed your freedom, if not for Twilight and the lives of your gifts have saved, then because of our friendship, and I selfishly couldn't lose that. Despite all the pain and beatings you personally delivered to my subjects, but I don't have much patience left, nor can I keep granting favors to keep ponies from demanding your head. Not when all your promises to control yourself prove false, time after time.
They tried to kill me first. If you...
I know I'm not blind. This is not about whether or not you were justified in your actions to defend yourself. If something like this had happened at any other time, I would be supporting you wholeheartedly. But this is not a life or death situation. You could have refused to fight against 3 of them. You could have surrendered. You could have called for a stop when you got hit. You could have been less you. No pony had to die. Your actions are not excused this time. Not when you had options left.
She pulled back. Rigdon leaned back on his right elbow, half lying on the mattress.
I could have surrendered,
he mused darkly.
An interesting notion, but that was not going to happen, Celestia. Either I came out of there with a win, or I died. Those were my options.
You conceited, sadistic, prideful...
Would you like to know why?
He interrupted her with a wide smile, as if everything was forgotten and he had something very interesting to share. To Rainbow, he looked like rarity when he had a straight flush at poker. Celestia waited for him to make his point.
Pinkie Pie, come over here, please.
He beckoned. Pinkie came to his side and sat next to his legs.
Now, Pinkie, I want you to do something for me. Point at the princess, he said.
Pinkie Pie blinked and exchanged a confused look with the rest of them, but slowly, she lifted her hoof to point at Celestia.
Still trying to dodge the issue, Rigdon? What is your point this time?
Celestia asked, her anger still evident in her voice.
Oh, nothing much,
he answered, patting Pinkie's head.
Just drawing to the attention of the fact that she unthinkingly pointed at you when there are actually two princesses in the room.
They all turned their head to look at Luna, who sat silent next to the bed, completely forgotten, watching them passively.
Funny how not even you thought about that.
Luna is my sister. Just because that stupid misdirection cut me off
Suddenly enraged, Rigdon got up and pushed Celestia back with one of his arms.
Maybe you should think of her less as your little sister and more of your equal. Maybe you should stop taking for granted the others of your...
Luna put a sudden stop to him with a lifted hoof.
That is far enough, Rigdon.
Rigdon sat back down, his eyes filled with scorn as he looked at Celestia. His lips were pulled back and he was gritting his teeth. Rainbow was reminded of timber wolves. Celestia turned to her sister.
Luna, we are a diarchy. Despite Rigdon's attempts to get me sidetracked, what is mine is yours. There is no need to... Did you notice any guards outside of my chambers, sister?
Luna asked.
What? Your guards will not accept my orders,
Luna said, anger in her voice.
They might bow and call me their princess, but at the end of the day, nothing will be done of what I asked by any pony. My doors are left unguarded, my rooms left uncleaned. If I wish to eat, I have to personally visit the kitchens and wait for my meals, or it will be lost in the bustle. The treasury will not release funds to me unless I get direct orders from you. I am not a diarch here, sister. I am just an unwanted guest.
Celestia was visibly shocked, the last remains of her anger evaporating.
Luna, if you had told me before, What would you have done, sister? Ordered them to obey? Is there any authority I am going to have only because you ordered it so?
Luna said bitterly. She jumped off her bed and sat next to the still fuming Rigdon.
Rigdon has been the only one to unquestioningly stand by my side since my return. A complete stranger to our lands has been more accepting of me than our own subjects. He has been doing everything in his power to aid me, and you saw the result in the tournament jeering and insults. If you wish to punish him for today's events, then let me tell you that you can't. He is under my command, and I rule today as an accident in the heat of battle. Overrule me on this and you will have to admit that the so-called diarchy is a farce. I need ponies by my side. If my plans are to prove myself as a princess are going to work, sister, you are not going to approve to the myriads of my request for tea. I need to have unmitigated loyalty of a lunar god.
Rainbow had to point out the flaw in that.
Sorry, princess, but one guy isn't really that much of a guard, is it? There will be more,
Luna insisted.
Especially after today. There are ponies who will wish to reach their full potential. They will come to us. There are ponies who will see the desperate need that we have of more members. They will come to us. We have proven we are just as good, nay, better, than the solo guard, and the ponies will cling to that. Or you might get ponies who will come to you because of the violence Rigdon portrayed.
Celestia pointed out.
What about those? I will have them too. They will be shaped like clay, and proper use will be made of them. Between Rigdon and I, we will forge out of them an effective military force.
To Rainbow, this sounded rather dodgy. It looked like Luna planned to give permission to put fear of her subjects, and considering who her first guard was, she had an inkling of how that would go about that. Did Celestia really feel so guilty for her sister that she would allow that? If Luna thought she would be able to turn that fear into loyalty, she was off her rocker. How would you convince somebody to trust his former bully? Rainbow still hadn't forgiven Gilda, and she had been her friend, not her victim.
Why?
Celestia cried out.
What do you want soldiers for, Luna? What is this vaunted plan of yours? What do we have a god for, sister? To keep the peace,
Celestia professed.
To keep ponies safe, not to endanger them and hurt them. Then they are unfit for what we need. Soldiers are used to fight, to kill, to remove threats. How many monsters roam our countryside, Celestia? Ponyville is but a stone's throw away from Canterlot, and even approaching Everstreet's edge is a gamble. Ponyville is protected just fine,
Celestia said, her eyes running over Twilight on the rest of them. Heck yeah, Ponyville is protected. Rainbow's chest puffed up with pride. Rigdon was not happy with the answer. He moved to stand up again, and was held back by a single hoof gesture from Luna.
Others do not have this protection. I plan on creating a proactive force. You have been Equestria's wisdom and morality. I cannot be that. Not anymore. So I will be its sword and...
She chuckled, nodding towards Rigdon.
Shield.
Celestia sighed, finally dropping down on the carpeted floor.
You are imagining a non-existing threat or underestimating our ponies. I am not sure which, Luna. When the need calls, the guard answers. The Solar Guard often engages those missions themselves when I take a personal interest.
Celestia glared at Rigdon once more.
Ask your friend, maybe. He can tell you about that. He has,
Luna answered with no pause.
And that is why we intend of that course. Once we have a solid force, our efforts will begin. I am sorry, sister, but today was the best chance we had to prove our worth. Prove your worth? Did those poor ponies have to pay that price for the Lunar Guard to prove its worth? Did Rigdon have to kill and maim them? Did you have to perform those horrid actions?
Asked Celestia, sorrowful.
There was no need for any pony to die, sister.
Luna answered her.
Yes,
Rigdon growled.
they could have surrendered.
There we go. We finally get to see Luna's side on this section, especially with how her subjects are treating her, which, not great. Imagine being a diarchy and not having any power, not having any maids. I would feel pretty shitty too. But who don't feel shitty are my wonderful donators. Thank you Chase Lemaster and HKH4, aka Texture. I really do appreciate your support with this channel. If you want to support in other ways, just your viewership is more than enough, but liking and subscribing and maybe leaving a comment down below does help me in the algorithm, and I appreciate it a ton. Thank you guys for everything. Anyways, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.